Hey guys, welcome back to Coffee and Current Events, and today I have another Ukraine update for you guys. We're going to be discussing the combat that's going on in eastern Ukraine, Kharkiv Oblast right there, and Donetsk down here. And we're going to be discussing what the Russians are planning and what the Ukrainians are planning. And their plans are going on almost simultaneously, and they both seem to be trying to go on the offensive in some sort of way. Now, let's just do a quick recap. So, as we well know, the Ukrainian Kharkiv counteroffensive retook almost the entirety of the Kharkiv Oblast, and now the Russians are pushed all the way, like they're pushed on the fringe of the Kharkiv Oblast to the very edge across the Oskol River. And that seems to be their final position, their final defensive position they could form before being forced into Luhansk. Now, first of all, before we jump into what the Ukrainians are doing, which I think is frankly more major, we're going to jump into what the Russians are doing, because people will complain that you're being biased if you simply report the facts just because it doesn't agree with what they want to believe. So we're going to jump into what the Russians are doing first. All right, so Russia is launching an attack on Bakhmut. In fact, they're continuing their attack on Bakhmut. And what we've seen is not actually a battle inside Bakhmut like we've seen in Soledar. It's more so they're just bombarding Bakhmut with artillery. It looks like standard Russian military tactics, where the Russian military, as we've seen in Ukraine, instead of just advancing into the city and facing horrendous casualties like they did in Mariupol, here we all remember the siege of Mariupol right there, and instead of doing that, they've somewhat adapted, and now they're just bombarding and blowing everything to the ground. Then they move in, stop, blow the rest of the ground, move over there, stop, and they continue the process. I wouldn't say it's a scorched earth policy. It's more so just destroy what's in the way, that way you don't lose too many men, as we've seen they can't afford to do. So they're continuing their attack on Bakhmut, but what it literally looks like is they're just launching massive artillery barrages. However, there was a report that they have established positions on the outskirts of the city of Bakhmut, and if that be the case, we will likely see the actual battle of Bakhmut begin very soon. And here's the thing, okay? The assault on Bakhmut is really, I think, just a Russian PR stunt. I mean, Bakhmut is not too strategically important. In fact, the Institute of the Study of War called the assault on Bakhmut meaningless, okay, as Bakhmut has no real strategic value. And some would argue, well, yes, it does. It controls a railroad here, and it would help Russia cement their control over Donetsk and Luhansk. While that may be true, it is not important at all when compared to the grand scheme of things and the main thing going on up here in Kharkiv. Okay, as we've seen, the Russians lost hundreds upon hundreds of miles of territory, and they're not even, it doesn't seem like they're putting too much focus on that. It seems like they're still focusing down here on Donetsk, and I think it's the reason why is simple. Putin obviously lost in Kharkiv. I think this is just really a PR stunt from Russia, because everyone knows he lost in Kharkiv. Russian military bloggers will admit that. The Russian Ministry of Defense somewhat alluded to that. They alluded to the fact that they have indeed lost in Kharkiv. Here's the thing, okay? They don't seem to be focusing too much on Kharkiv. They said they're going to retreat and regroup in Donetsk, and that's what it seems like they've been doing. However, they are still allowing the Ukrainians to make serious headway, and I think they're attacking Bakhmut with the goal of seizing Bakhmut and Soledar right here, simply to say, we lost in Kharkiv, but we still won in Bakhmut and Soledar. I really think it's a PR stunt, because if you actually look at these two cities, they may have strategic value in Donetsk, but they don't have too much strategic value when you compare it to what's going on in Kharkiv, okay? So it's almost very similar to what Hitler would do during World War II, when the Soviets were closing in from the east after Operation Bagration in the United States, and their allies were closing in from the west. He would win these minor victories or commit these massacres against Allied soldiers and claim, hey, we did this, hey, we won here, even though we really lost here. And it's really a distraction from the main loss they just suffered. So that's what I really think is going on, because if you actually look at Bakhmut and Soledar, they're not too strategically important. And even if the Russians were to seize both these cities, they will get closer to attacking Sloviansk and Kramatorsk, but they're still a while from doing that, and the Ukrainians are still launching an offensive in the north of Donetsk and in the east of Kharkiv. So that's what the Russians are doing. Now for what the Ukrainians are doing. The Ukrainian forces have breached the Russian lines along the Oskol River, which is right here. This is Russia's remaining fortress. This is their last stronghold in Kharkiv. Okay, they lose this, they're going to lose Kharkiv, and the Ukrainians will likely push into Luhansk. Now here's the thing. Ukrainian forces have established two bridgeheads along the Oskol River, which is significant because now they can move troops and equipment across the Oskol River to attack the Russians directly in their last stronghold, okay? The Ukrainian forces captured Kupiansk-Vazolovy, which I believe is right here, okay, on the east side of the Oskol River across from Kupiansk, and the eastern portion of Kupiansk, establishing another bridgehead over the Oskol River. And this is going to threaten the Russian supply lines all along Luhansk. Now here's the problem with that. Here's the major issue with that, okay? This is threatening the Russian supply lines all along northern Luhansk. This will severely degrade the Russian ability to actually take the rest of the Donetsk Oblast, okay? And it will severely hinder their operations in the rest of Donbass. If Ukraine can reach the Luhansk Oblast border and retake land, they can subsequently win the Battle of Donbass. This is extremely critical. This is critical, okay? Because think about it. According to Serhiy Haidai, the Luhansk governor, Russian forces have evacuated Savatov right here. And he claims they evacuated Starobilsk. Now here's the thing. Serhiy Haidai claimed Russian forces have evacuated Savatov. And while while it may sound a bit like wishful thinking, it may actually be the exact opposite, because Russia's Ministry of Defense did say they will be regrouping into Donetsk, which is down here. So it's very possible they evacuated many cities in Luhansk while still maintaining some sort of stronghold on the remainder of Kharkiv. The problem is the Ukrainian forces have now breached their lines on the Oskar River. If the Ukrainians push from Kupiansk and they push deeper, they're going to force the Russians to evacuate the rest of Kharkiv, very similar to what they did in the Izium rayon, the Izium salient. It's very similar to what they did. In other words, you breach the position right here. If you breach the position deep enough, you're going to trap these, you're going to cut these soldiers off from the rest. These are likely going to withdraw back into the Russian border. And then these guys right here, if they continue to push offensive in alignment, they are going to trap the Russians in a salient and could very easily force them to withdraw from Kharkiv. If that happens and the Ukrainians start coming to Luhansk, Russia's battle of Donbass, it will be on its last legs, okay? Because if they start taking territory in Luhansk, the Russians are really going to have two options. If they press offensive in Donetsk and ignore the territory they could potentially lose in Luhansk, they're going to lose their overall objective, capture Donbass, which Donbass is Luhansk and Donetsk. They must maintain control of Luhansk and capture Donetsk. So their attacks on Bakhmut and Soledar, as I said earlier, seem to just be PR stunts. They're trying to paint a masquerade of victory out of defeat. So if they take Bakhmut, which is strategically not that important, especially when compared to the overall situation, they can say, hey, we won here. And that's the biggest thing they can do. And frankly, I don't believe Russia does have the ability to take the rest of Donetsk. As we've seen at the Battle of Seversk, they were fighting for over 2 months, and they didn't even break through the city. They didn't even come into the city and actually start fighting like that. Which I understand why, because Ukraine's at good positions, but if they really did have so much mana left and didn't lose tens of thousands of casualties, they should have been able to take the city very easily. That's basically the latest update we have for today. On the southern front of the Ukrainian area, it's very difficult to verify information because both sides are making claims, and the Ukrainians actually seem to be quite silent on this entire offensive, while you have Ukrainian patriots or Ukrainian bloggers saying they did something huge, while the Ukrainian government's silent on it, and even if they weren't, you actually have to verify that. It looks like the city of Davydiv Brid, I hope I'm saying that right, is contested, and it also looks like the city of Oleksandrivka right here is contested. And if the Ukrainians take that, that'll pose a serious threat to Kherson. So anyway, guys, that's all the updates we have for today. I will keep you updated on the latest news on the Russo-Ukrainian war. Be sure to subscribe for more content like this. Share this video with a friend. God bless, and I'll catch you guys next time.